Now, nobody was more surprised than I when I got a phone call in the wake of the Trump speech to the United Nations, where he was bragging about how he could cure autism, among other things he was bragging about, to appear on television to talk about the evidence for that. Unfortunately, the person who phoned up was not the BBC, but Talk TV, a far-right television station for pub bores, who features, among other people, Julia Hartley-Brewer, a very right-wing commentator who has in the past invited me on a couple of times. But since the last time I managed to slip in that something was the fault of Brexit, I haven't been asked again. The trouble is, I'm 89 now, and I just wasn't very fluent in this thing. I did accept it because there's no point in preaching to the converted all the time. But I didn't do a particularly good job on it, and this video is to make some amends for the deficiencies of what I said. For one thing, I said I kept referring to brothers and sisters instead of using the word siblings. Now, that was just intended to avoid using the word siblings, which is slightly technical and probably not universally understood. But of course, we're talking about drugs in pregnancy, and what I was, so I should just have talked about sisters. The best controlled study of this risk was done in Sweden by Ahlqvist et al., which I had read before the invitation came. So I did feel qualified to express an opinion on it. And they did a clever control for the genetic, because autism has a strong genetic element. And by looking at sisters who are pregnant, but one had taken paracetamol during the pregnancy and the other hadn't, they had very good control group to see what the difference really was. And when they did that, the very slight correlation between autism and paracetamol vanished. I also tried ChatGPT, which in general I have a very low opinion of, but it made a nice graph of the results from Ahlqvist et al. So, and I did check that the numbers it had plotted were right. So I'll show that overlaid on my ham-fisted talk.
So let's move to this story then. This is Donald Trump back in true Trumpian fashion, sparking a major controversy claiming that mothers taking paracetamol during pregnancy may increase the risk of autism in their children. Health experts globally have reaffirmed its safety, however, and warned that untreated pain does actually pose a greater risk to mothers and babies. Let's get a word from David Colquhoun, who's a biophysicist and statistician. I know he's tweeted a lot about this kind of issue. David, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, if nothing else, Donald Trump does liven up the news agenda and allows, for an awful lot of conversation. But this is very serious territory. He gave a press conference, and I would put this same point even to super fans of Donald Trump, made some very big remarks about what I always thought, and it seems the medical establishment agree, was a tried and tested and very safe drug for some very, very major controversial points without actually offering much evidence for it. What was your take on what the US president said?
What he said was perfect nonsense. He just makes stuff up. I mean, he's well known for making stuff up, I suppose, but when it comes to serious matters like this, that's a pretty worrying thing to do. I mean, he knows nothing of science, and he was told so by his Secretary for Health, I suppose, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who also knows nothing about science or medicine. He had a degree in American history, but it's a very curious phenomenon. People feel, well, the MAGA wing of the Republicans in America feel obliged to simply make up things. You can call them conspiracy theories if you want. It's almost as though the fact that something wasn't true is sufficient reason to advocate it. It's a sort of destructive tendency, I think, in their thinking.
And I suppose certainly with pharmaceuticals, as I'm sure you're aware, David, there's a long history of conspiracies around this area, because it's almost the perfect subject matter to advance the idea of kind of establishment, big corporation, cover-ups, money-making, control of the population, control of people. I suppose it has tentacles in all of those territories. Although Mr. Trump does say, and as far as I understand it, that the federal agency in charge of things stateside when it comes to pharmaceuticals and the like have sort of gone as far as saying there could be a link between paracetamol and autism, and it seems that is the basis of which Mr. Trump and his health secretary are making these statements.
Yes, well, you can never prove that a risk is absolutely zero, but the fact is that there's only been one really good study of this, which is done in 2024 on a couple of million births in Sweden. And it was paid for by the National Institutes of Health as well, the American organization. And that showed that there was a very small risk if you just analyzed the raw data. The trouble is with analyzing the raw data of this sort is that you can't tell whether it's causal or not. It's a well-known problem of surveys that you can't distinguish what causes what. There was, and so the way they addressed this was to look at brothers and sisters, siblings, one of whom had been exposed to paracetamol and the other hadn't. And they did it quite carefully. They looked to see whether there was a difference, whether it made a difference whether it was the younger one that had been exposed or not exposed. And when you looked at it within families like that, the risk was just vanished. And that is a very good way of doing it, which hadn't been done before, because it controls for the genetics. Children of parents who have autistic children are more likely to use paracetamol during pregnancy than those the parents who don't have it. So it's because it has a large inherited component. Of course, there's going to be a correlation, but it's not causal. The children of those parents were more likely to have autism, but that's not necessarily due to their exposure to the paracetamol, but because of the heritability of the condition.
How would that, just a layman's question then, I mean, many people might say, well, but surely that still leaves the reality that those mothers took paracetamol and therefore it could be causal.
Well, yes, it could be, but the fact that there was no association when you looked at it in this sibling way, brothers and sisters, suggests that it wasn't, because there was a small correlation when you didn't look at it the sensible way, but it vanished when you looked at brothers and sisters. And that certainly suggests that the correlation you see on the raw data is spurious. It's a result of heritability, not of paracetamol.
And is there always going to be? I mean, is the reality, as a biophysicist, you'd have looked into all sorts of surveys on a whole range of things over your career. I mean, there's always ways of curving statistics. You're a statistician as well, so you will, you can, lies, damn lies, and statistics. That old adage is, does play a part. And I guess, there will be some people, and I've already seen voices from the medical world, few and far between, who are actually corroborating what Mr. Trump said and say, no, if you look at this survey, you will see actually, what you've just said, David, might stand, but there's another way to look at this, and other people are producing surveys that say, look, this shows the very opposite. Well, what do you say to that? This constant, ongoing, well, if you read this, it says that, if you read that, it says this.
Well, people will advocate what they believe anyway, by and large.
But that's what's going on here, isn't it?
Really? They don't get much notice of evidence. No, but the fact was that the Swedish survey, by far the best one, did show a slight association if you looked at the raw data. But when they looked at it again using the brothers and sisters method, then that correlation vanished.
Right.
So it didn't disagree with the earlier ones, it just said that the earlier ones were wrong.
Yeah, and this was 2.5 million children they used in this survey, as I understand it, so it wasn't an insignificant survey in that respect. Listen,
no,
David,
good.
Great to have you on, sir. Thank you very much indeed. David Colhoun, biophysicist and statistician. I do think the one thing I think most people can agree on is that there is and it's fact, if you look back at the history of this, and we know we had a bit of it with COVID, and we know that, it's right to have concerns over, I mean, God, I've got 2 kids, it worries the life out of me. The emails have just come round for both of them. They're in different age groups. The flu vaccine, we've got the flu vaccine is ready to go. They've never had it, and there's no reason for that. There's no oh God, the flu vaccine's going to kill them or anything like that. But the kind of hesitancy, to me, is based on the fact that they are quite fit and healthy 7 and 11-year-olds. So I've got a funny feeling. I've never taken a full flu vaccine in my life. I've never really needed one, but I don't think I've had flu. If I've had a bit of man flu, I think that I'm told by medics that's a slightly different thing, although I would argue against it on a good day. I've never needed it, and I don't think they need it, to be honest. But there's always been an underpinning of distrust that when it comes to routine inoculations, vaccinations, is there a difference? And other forms of kind of medicinal solution, there's always been that belief by a small contingent of people that this is governments putting drugs into people in order to create another set of headlines, whether those headlines are about distrust, whether they're about reducing population. There's always been this kind of belief that's there. It's mostly not borne out in any kind of fact, but like all conspiracies, there's always a little kernel there that you go, well, what about that story? Let's talk to Robert in Nottingham on this issue. Robert, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.